Hello and welcome to Brands Hatch for the Radical Challenge Cup. I'm Kev Harris. This then is the final weekend of the 2020 season. Round 5 of 5, and if you were watching us last time out at Snetterton, you will already know that Marcus Cluton has picked up the win. So this weekend it is all about the remaining 2 steps on the podium. At the moment then in second place, Shane Stoney is sitting there just on 531 points, and Jason Rishover just behind him is the man currently sitting in third. But the news is this for our first 50 minutes endurance race of the weekend. The car that's put himself on pole is number 52, and that is Mark Richards, currently sitting 13th in the championships, the 360 racing driver there. He will be thrilled with that pole. And don't forget, of course, with these 50-minute endurance races, for each win in the 50-minute endurance race, you will score 80 points and 2 points for a pole and 2 points for a fastest lap. So there is a lot to play for then. One 50-minute race today, a 20-minute sprint race tomorrow, and another 50-minute race to finish it off at the end of the day. Things are starting to happen now, and there's the man sitting in second on the championship at the moment. That's Shane Stoney, just pulling in there. And Elliot Goodman, car number 28, just back there, he's currently sitting in fourth in the championship even as we speak. So cars starting to line up. The interesting thing that we're wondering at the moment is what they've done with their setup, because as I'm standing here now, in the last few moments, some spots of rain have started to fall. It's been predominantly dry here all day at Brands, but as the rain has started to fall, we wonder if any of these guys have got themselves a wet setup or are they on dry. They won't have had time to change in the last couple of minutes. I can see some wet weather tyres on the trolleys just over there, so maybe people are already thinking along that way. We're running a slightly delayed schedule here at Brands today, so we're just wondering whether they're going to send them straight out or what's going on. Being told to start up even as we speak, so we'll probably have to move. Yeah, slightly delayed schedule. This one was supposed to go off at 20 past 1, and we're a little bit past that now, so there was a shortened lunch break. Probably haven't got much time to jump in and grab a word with the drivers for this one, but we'll certainly be there throughout the race, and we'll get a word with the winners afterwards. And of course, here again, like I said, tomorrow for the 20-minute and the 50-minute endurance race tomorrow. That's what it's all about, though. There's the man sitting in pole at the moment, car number 52, 13th in the championship, Mark Richards. Going to be thrilled with the position that he's put him in. But what can car number 89 do? Shane Stoney, second in the championship overall, already got his yellow lights on there, sitting in the box seat, ready to go. I'm going to be down here at the assembly area while they go out, but the man that is sitting waiting patiently in commentary even as we speak is Mark Werrell. So I think the best thing to do is to take a full look at the grid with your race commentator, Mark Werrell.
Thanks, Kevin. Yep, so let's guide you through the grid on what are still dark and grey, and as you can see from Kevin, how wrapped up he is there in the assembly area. Cloudy and cold skies here. The grid then is going to head out onto circuit very, very shortly. We've got a 50-minute race, which means there is a pit stop in the middle of this race as well. The pit window opens after 20 minutes of the race and remains open for 10 minutes, so with between 30 and 20 minutes to go is when the pit window is open in reality, and all of the cars have to come into the pit lane. They have to wait until they pass the pit lane open sign, which is displayed at the start-finish line, and then they've got 10 minutes to come in after that, and during that period of time they have to make a 45-second pit stop plus the time that it takes to go through the pits. The car has to be stationary for 45 seconds, and of course it has to slow down to the pit lane speed limit on entry and can only accelerate beyond the pit lane speed limit on exit. But there are also success seconds that are added to some of the cars on the grid, and that really depends how they finished in the previous pit stop race. Well, the previous pit stop race took place at Snetterton just last weekend. Back to that weekend, head out onto the circuit. So we've got 4 cars on the grid that have additional time penalties, or success seconds as they're actually known, before they can then rejoin. So it's not just the standard 45-second stop for them. They add that extra time to the stationary period, and therefore it is likely to drop them down through the order. So the cars then are coming up onto the grid, ready for the start of this 50-minute race. Let's just guide you through the grid. The car that pulls up onto pole position is number 52, which is Mark Richards. So he sits there on pole position, Mark Richards, who will be hoping the London-based man who's involved in private equity can come through and maybe grab a win in this one. It'd be great to see Mark Richards claim a win. So he's had a second place so far this year. That was very early on in the season up at Alton Park. and since then has been rather troubled really with a sort of DNF at the front end of the season, DNF at the back end at Silverstone Grand Prix. We didn't see him out at Donington Park or at Snetterton, so it's nice to see him back in the championship. And alongside him is number 89, which is Shane Stoney, who has had a win so far this year. Such has been the dominance of Marcus Clutton, who has already tied up this championship. Shane Stoney has had just a single win, but he's had lots of seconds, having to play the bridesmaid to Marcus Clutton all year. But in the absence of Marcus Clutton, are we going to see Shane Stoney add another win to his tally? Row 2 of the grid is number 14. That's the white car with the blue flashes of long-time Radical racer nowadays, John McLeod. And alongside is 28, which is Elliot Goodman. Row 3 of the grid is Jason Rishover, number 23 on the grid. Now, is Jason there? He is not there on the grid by the look of things. I can't see Jason Rishover there, number 23. And alongside is number 31, which is Rod Goodman. So that's 23 and 31 on row number 3. And row 4 of the grid is car number 7. Now, that is a 2-driver car, so it is going to be Auden Gudmundsson, the Icelandic driver, who will start behind the wheel of that number 7 car. And alongside it should be number 80, which is Peter Tyler. Peter Tyler's car is there indeed. And then we have also got, towards the tail end of the field, car number 49, which I think, it hasn't been confirmed as yet, but I think it was scheduled to be Neil Glover that was potentially starting that car towards the tail end of the field. So cars are lined up there. We have got all 9 of them there, so we are going to have all of 9 of them out there ready for this 40-minute race. They're not quite in the order that we were expecting though, so I think they're probably just not quite lined up as they should have been, but they can sort that out when they head onto the rolling lap, which should be taking place before too much longer. So in terms of the drivers that have got success penalties to worry about, so the pit stop for all of them is 45 seconds stationary period. Now the car that's on the outside of the front row of the grid, the black car but with the yellow flashes to the headlamps on it, Shane Stoney, he will have to remain stationary for an extra 15 seconds in the pits. So it's not the standard 45 for him, it's 60 seconds that he has to remain stationary because he finished second last time out at Silverstone. Row 2 of the grid, the white car with the blue flashes, John McLeod, will have to remain stationary for an extra 5 seconds come the pit stop window for John McLeod. So that will be as a result of his finish of 4th position at Silverstone last time out. The car that's alongside him, which is number 28, Elliot Goodman, he finished 5th at Silverstone last time out, so he will also have to remain stationary for 5 seconds. And then on to row number 3 of the grid, 23, Jason Rishover, who lies 3rd in the championship standings and is yet to have a win so far this year. Jason, who's been around Radical Racing for a good number of years, has raced some LMP3 cars in the past as well. He's had a second, he's had thirds, he's had 4ths and 5ths and 6ths, but the one top 6 position that he's not had so far is a win. And he has got 10 success seconds to worry about come the pit stop window. So, countdown board continuing. The cars will work their way around the circuit. As we say, Marcus Clutton already having claimed the championship for this year with a single win of the 3 at Oulton Park. He claimed 2 of the 3 wins at Silverstone. He won all 3 races at Donington Park and repeated that feat at a very, very wet Snetterton last weekend. Back-to-back weekends, just meaning that some of the drivers, likes of Spencer Bourne, not able to join us this weekend. Such a shame that we haven't seen Spencer, who's another driver that's been around Radical Racing for a very, very good number of years. So the cars heading around the circuit, these are all the SR3s, so it's the SR3 RSX or RSs or Super Sports as we've had in the past in this category, running as either solo drivers or team drivers, 2 separate championships for them. They're all powered by the RPE Tune, that's the Radical Performance Engineering Suzuki 1500cc engine in this one. So unlike the 1340s that we saw earlier on today, if you were watching the live stream of the Radical SR1 Cup, these are 1500cc cars. Top speed at about 147, just shy of 150 miles per hour. But again, a very, very light car and with a significant brake horsepower as well, 225 brake horsepower, which when you take into account how little the car weighs, makes for a very, very good power to weight ratio in these cars. So they really do provide some stunning performance for them. 0 to 60 time is there or thereabouts, very low 3 seconds, 3.1, 3.3 seconds, something like that. So it's a very, very quick car. 620 kilos, by the way, is the weight of the cars. So now there, I'm afraid to say, is another car that's had a spin on the warm-up lap. That is Auden Edmondson, the Icelandic driver, who has now got the car pointing in the right direction, and we'll be able to continue. That's the car that leads the team challenge. It's the one car that we've seen out at every single round of the 2020 Radical Challenge Championship. Auden Edmondson sharing with Tom Ashton, prepared by the Radical Works team, that car. Look for the rest of them just weaving from side to side to try and build some temperature. Mark Richards starting from pole position, a driver who's seen racing not just in the Radical Challenge but in Radical SR1 Cup in the past. Alongside him is number 89, which is Shane Stoney. Shane Stoney is a former Mini Challenge champion. We've also seen Shane out claiming championships in Ginettas in the past as well, so he'll be looking to see whether he can grab his second win of the season. Third on the grid is number 14, which is the car in the hands of John McLeod, the London-based entrepreneur who's racing things like Caterhams in the past, and alongside him is number 28, and that is the car of Elliot Goodman, who comes from Northamptonshire and has again done a chunk of racing in the Radical SR1 Cup in the past. Also did some karting, did Elliot Goodman some years ago. So that gives you a little bit about the drivers that are now all ready to go in this first Radical Challenge Championship race of the weekend. The safety car peels its way into the pit lane, and with all of the cars now, including Auden Edmondson, who's managed to catch up following his spin, we're about to get this Radical Challenge Championship race underway. Lights go out. Mark Richards is going to lead the charge up towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time, but Shane Stoney is absolutely driver's left as they head in towards the braking area for the left-hander. Cold tyres have caught a few drivers out, but in the Radical Challenge Championship, everybody just treading very gingerly and safely through the first corner. So Mark Richards picks up the lead of the race from pole position and converts it to the early race lead. Shane Stoney slots himself through into second place, with John McLeod in third position, and Jason Rishover is up into fourth now at the expense of Elliot Goodman there. That was a quick dive up the inside of Jason Rishover as they turned in towards Druids for the first time, managing to steal the place away. I'd have thought Jason might be a little bit disappointed with his qualifying performance, qualifying down in fifth position and was about 1.6 seconds off the pace of the pole sitter, Mark Richards. Out of Surtees, you can see the few spits of rain beginning to fall now as well. All of the cars running on control Hankook tyres, but those spits of rain on a slick tyre on a dry track, cold ambient temperature. We won't need much more rain before it starts to get a little bit greasy, and at the moment the tyres of course don't have any temperature at all in them, having only just completed the formation lap. So build the temperatures, and then the tyres, once they're a bit warmer, can cope with a slightly damper track. And that's what the drivers will be doing, pushing hard as Shane Stoney looks to try and get the overlap here on Mark Richards. Heading through Dingle Dell, didn't quite happen. On flash the brake lights and towards the right-hander at Sheen Curve, and then on towards Stirling's. Mark Richards leads the race. Shane Stoney in second place. John McLeod sitting there in third place, but he's under pressure from Jason Rishover, who's there in fourth place. So they sort of paired off a little bit, haven't they, for the front four places. And as they now head up towards the completion of the first lap, Shane Stoney is a bit more confident here, trying to go around the outside of Mark Richards, heading up towards Clearways and Clark Curve, but that wasn't quite going to work. And Jason Rishover is in the gravel, I'm afraid. He was looking to try and get himself up into third position, started fifth, but he's going to finish the first lap, I think, down in eighth position, Jason Rishover, just having gone beyond the circuit limits, getting caught out in these tricky conditions. And yeah, Jason Rishover down to eighth, losing 3 places, I'm afraid, from his grid place, and losing 5 places from the position that he was on in track at the time of the incident. You can still see cars moving around as the weather conditions start to close in a little bit more now. And off has gone the race leader. Mark Richards loses the car heading through Graham Hill Bend and just needs to make sure he rejoins safely. He's managed to find a little gap to slot himself through into, so Mark Richards rejoins the race ahead of Elliot Goodman. But that was a moment for the race leader there. Jason Rishover also had his moment. There goes number 31, Rod Goodman, fighting away with the car that sits behind him, Peter Tyler, but through into the lead of the race now has gone number 89, Shane Stoney, following that problem for Mark Richards. Here comes Peter Tyler, absolutely side by side with Rod Goodman, has the inside line, should go through as they head up towards Hawthorne. Yeah, place gained for Peter Tyler. That will be up into 5th position. Down to 6th goes Rod Goodman. And Rod Goodman also now coming under attack from the next of the cars that sits behind, which is the car that we think was scheduled to have been started by Neil Glover, number 49 car. So number 89 which is Shane Stoney, our race leader, looking to see what he might be able to do. The best of the fights is further back. There goes 23. That is the car of Jason Rishover, looking to try and thread his way back up through the order. But for the moment, nothing quite happening for Jason Rishover. Picks off one place. That's Peter Tyler that he manages to pick off on the run up towards the braking area for Clearways Corner. And now Jason Rishover will turn his attention to the next of the cars up the road, which is Elliot Goodman's machine. See the spits of rain on the camera as the weather again just starts to deteriorate that little bit more. But the drivers, of course, if they do feel as though it's starting to get marginal, they'll still want to try and stay on the slicks for as long as they can, because your best bet would be wait until the pit window opens, then come in and change your tyres, rather than have to come in outside of the pit window and then make a second stop to do the mandatory aspect. So another place picked up by Jason Rishover. He's now ahead of Elliot Goodman. So that's going to put Jason Rishover back up into 4th position. Goodman down into 5th and under attack from the black and Dayglow car of Peter Tyler, former Radical SR1 Cup racer that sits behind. Turn their way out of Surtees and start to accelerate their way on towards Pilgrim's Drop and down through Hawthorne Hill. 45 minutes to go. Peter Tyler looking to try and see what he might be able to do. Goes through and ahead of Elliot Goodman, so another place lost there for Elliot Goodman. So it started this lap down in 4th position, is now down into 6th place as Jason Rishover goes through, and then Peter Tyler also is able to thread his way through and past. So up towards Sheen Curve they'll be heading. Brake lights come on, pitch the car in towards the right hand. A difficult part of the circuit that as well. You're braking uphill, but the difficulty is you can't see the curb on the apex of Sheen Curve until you've already committed to it. You have to pitch the car in towards the right hander, and only once you've pitched the car in do you actually know whether you've got it right or not, and whether you've grabbed the apex or, if anything, probably run a little bit wide occasionally. And if you run wide there, it's very difficult then to get the car across from the left-hand side of the circuit and the apex of what is Sheen Curve back to the opposite side of the circuit, the right-hand side, to take the next left-hander, which is Stirling. It's a very technical part of the circuit. So in towards the braking area for Paddock Hill Bend. Peter Tyler in his newly acquired 5th position. Elliot Goodman sitting behind him. A couple of radical lengths between the pair of them as they press on up towards the braking area for Druids. At the moment, though, it's still Peter Tyler that hangs on to the place, the Wiston-based company director. 3 laps have already been completed by our race leader. The fight that we're looking at is the fight for 5th and 6th position. As Peter Tyler looks to try and make good his escape over the car that he's taken the place away from, that being Elliot Goodman. But for Elliot Goodman, say a driver who's competed in things like the SR1 Cup and did a bit of karting before he also came into the Radical Challenge Championship, the Northampton-based driver, just can't quite close in that little bit more, can he? Close, but not quite close enough as they thread their way through the right-hander at Hawthorns and down the short straight before they then just very quickly dab on the brakes and in towards Westfield. Now Jason Rishover has sort of plateaued again now in his progress. He's caught up with the cars running in 2nd and 3rd place, but can't try and find his way through. But Mark Richards throws it up the inside of John McLeod. The door is open and Jason Rishover's trying to find his way through as well, and John McLeod's lost 2 places from 2nd down to 4th in the matter of a few yards there as Mark Richards prized the door open, and whilst it was ajar, Jason Rishover thought, right, okay, I'll have a bit of that, and through goes Rishover now into 3rd position. All of this has played beautifully into the hands of Shane Stoney, because he is now leading by a very comfortable margin. 12.9 seconds is the lead advantage as Jason Rishover pops in the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 42.499 for the car in 3rd position, trying to hunt down the pole sitter Mark Richards. Both of them having had spins in this race. Jason Rishover's was, well, not a spin I suppose, more of a trip into the gravel briefly up at Clark Curve. Mark Richards, it was at this point of the circuit here at Graham Hill Bend where he had his spin. So they've both had to work their way back through the order. Jason Rishover says had every other position inside the top 6 other than a win so far this year. Mark Richards, who sits there in 2nd position, haven't seen as much of him in the championship as we would have wished, has had a 2nd, a 3rd and a 4th as his best finishes of the season so far. So he is on course to equal his best finish of the season, but there are still 40 minutes of this race to go. And remember, there are still another 11 or so minutes before the pit window even opens. Shane Stoney, who leads the race, in reality needs to open up that gap, doesn't he? Because he has 15 success seconds to worry about come the pit stop window. Mark Richards in second place has no success seconds to worry about. So arguably Shane Stoney needs to open up a 15-second gap in part one of the race to hang on to the lead for part two. And at the moment, he's almost there. 12 or so seconds is the lead advantage that he had at the beginning of this lap. And he's just now popped in another new fastest lap of the race, Shane Stoney, as you could just see, 1 minute 37.720, which is instantly bettered by Mark Richards. And Mark Richards has brought the lead advantage down to just 8.8 seconds now. A very, very good lap indeed put in by Mark Richards there. Peter Tyler still under pressure for 5th position from Elliot Goodman, who's more than keeping him honest at this stage. Just 0.4 of a second between the pair. The leading car in the teams championship at this stage is Auden Gudbranson, down in 8th position, the number 7 car. But for this battle for 5th and 6th place, Elliot Goodman is pushing as hard as he possibly can to try and see whether he can close up that tiny bit that he needs onto Peter Tyler. If he gets a good run coming off here, there's a possibility. He's that little bit quicker. Yeah, very good run coming off there. Much, much slower through there was Peter Tyler, and coming off Surtees corner, this is the opportunity that Elliot Goodman is looking for to try and grab 5th place back away again, sitting in the slipstream of Peter Tyler, but not really close enough again by the time they head down towards Hawthorns. So through the right-hander in what are ever-changing conditions here at Brands Hatch as well. Up towards the right-hander at Westfield, then start to plunge downhill at Dingle Dell once more before you then climb uphill in towards Sheen Curve. Brake lights flash on, pitch the car in towards the right-hander again, almost pushing Peter Tyler along is Elliot Goodman, while Shane Stoney pops in another new fastest lap of the race, that time through 1 minute 32.698, which is instantly bettered by Mark Richards yet again, with a 1 minute 30.2, so the track conditions changing all of the time as a few spits of rain slowly disappear and the tyres get ever more up to temperature. And now this is the opportunity that Elliot Goodman has been looking for. He's almost drawn himself alongside Peter Tyler as they go over the start-finish line. Elliot Goodman that little bit braver on the brakes up the inside at Paddock Hill Bend. Now just needs to make sure he covers off any attack on the exit, but much, much quicker midway through the corner was Elliot Goodman, and therefore no defence was needed on the run up towards Druids. Signed, sealed, delivered. Up to 5th position for Elliot Goodman, down to 6th for number 80 Peter Tyler. Just under 9 minutes before the pit window opens. The gap first to second keeps coming down as well. It's down to 6.3 seconds now, as Mark Richards was a full 2.4 seconds quicker than the race leader. So it's worth keeping your eye on that gap on the left-hand side of the screen. 6.345 is the gap first to second, but it is diminishing all of the time and looks as though it's going to come down further on this lap. Good little fight going on also for what is 7th and 8th place. Now this is Rod Goodman fighting away with Arden Edmondson. So the two of them very much together. But for the moment, Auden is still sitting behind. This might be the opportunity though. Auden Edmondson is alongside, yep, sneaks his way through and past. Place gained for Auden Edmondson. Losing a place is the number 31 car of Rod Goodman, and that was on the run out of Westfield, down through Dingle Dell and up towards Sheen Curve, where the place was taken away. So the Icelandic driver now up into 7th place. Rod Goodman down into 8th place. Neil Glover, I think it is, completes the last of the runners in 9th position currently. So through goes Auden Edmondson. Rod Goodman, having lost the position, is hugely keen to try and at least cling on to the coattails of the car that's taken it away from him. And that number 7 car also is the leading car in the teams championship in this race. It also leads the teams championship overall. Auden Edmondson leading that teams championship element, sharing the car with long time Radical racer Tom Ashton. Tom is always quick, always very quick. So out of Surtees, starting to build the speeds again as they head on towards Pilgrim's Drop. Auden Edmondson just managing to gap that little bit more Rod Goodman through the first third of this lap. The circuit's broken into 3 sectors. Auden Edmondson was almost 0.9 of a second quicker than Rod Goodman, so the gap has certainly opened it out between the two of them. Now, Mark Richards is popping in fastest laps after fastest laps as well, so it could well be worth watching the lead battle as well before too much longer, because the gap is coming down. There's the car that runs in last position at the moment, which is Neil Glover. Back towards Auden Edmondson and Rod Goodman as they still squabble over who is going to finish in 7th place and who is going to finish in 8th position. Now the gap between the pair of them was just under 0.3 of a second when they came over the start-finish line last time through. This time through it's certainly grown and is at least a second, I would have thought. Yeah, it's 0.978 of a second between the pair fighting over 7th and 8th positions. But Auden Edmondson, despite his spin on the formation lap, seems to have everything very much under control at this stage, whereas Rod Goodman pushing as hard as he possibly can, but for the Northampton-based company director, former kart racer, just not able to close up. Now, here is our 4th place car. That's John McLeod, who is very much on his own in 4th position at this stage. He's got Jason Rishover ahead of him. He's got Elliot Goodman behind him, so he just keep pushing on at his own pace. The lap time that he popped in last time through was the best lap of the race that he's done, but he was actually a little bit slower than Elliot Goodman, who sits behind. So that car there, the black and gold car, is beginning to close in. Now there is Shane Stoney. Now that's our race leader. The gap has been continually coming down between Shane Stoney and Mark Richards. Now, might just be Shane Stoney driving within himself, or maybe Mark Richards genuinely has more pace at this stage. The lap times keep coming down as the circuit's just getting drier and drier and drier. Hankook tyres working hard, but Mark Richards again last time through was 0.3 of a second quicker than the race leader. 1 minute 27.491, bringing the lead advantage to less than 4 seconds now. So through goes Shane Stoney. There is Mark Richards. Remember, he did qualify on pole position. Mark Richards was 0.6 of a second quicker than Shane Stoney in qualifying this morning. Shane Stoney with 1 win under his belt. Mark Richards with no wins under his belt. In what's really only been a half season in the championship for him. It was a shortened season anyway, but Mark not opting to take in the races at either Donington Park or Snetterton, and hence is not featuring really where he ought to be in terms of the championship standings. But with a full campaign hopefully under his belt for next year, he's probably going to be one to watch out for, I would have thought. So here comes Shane Stoney, still leading the race. Father Chris used to be a radical racer some time back and was a very good kart racer, his father, Chris Stoney. But Shane, second generation racer, new fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 27.228, means that for the first time in a while, the gap first to second just comes out again. There's Shane Stoney coming out of Druids, and you could just see in the background where Mark Richards is. So Mark heading round through Graham Hill Bend now, as the race leader is already partly along the Cooper Straight. So there we go, there's Shane Stoney at the front of the shot. Here comes Mark Richards. So Mark Richards pushing hard. He might have been a little bit slower on the lap that they've just completed, but the first third of this lap, Mark Richards is turning the screw again. He's gained another 1/4 of a second over the race leader, Shane Stoney. So Shane Stoney just needs to keep pushing as hard as he possibly can if he wants to try and hang on to this lead. Up towards the braking area for Sheen Curve, flicking his way through the right-hander. Then up towards the left-hander at Surtees Corner. Shane Stoney looking as though he's got everything under control at this stage. Up towards the completion of another lap. This is lap number 11 that's now about to be chalked into the book. Another 2.5 minutes before the pit window opens. And then from there, in the case of the solo drivers, of which that is the vast majority of the field, they really have 10 minutes when they want to decide when is the best point to come into the pit lane. For the shared drivers, there's a bit more working out that needs doing, because one might be quicker than the other, or one might be paying the bills and the other one might be the hired hand. Or they might just decide to come in at the halfway point of the race and each have 25 minutes each. So Shane Stoney leading the race, but the lap that's just been completed by Mark Richards was again a new fastest lap of the race. 1:27.110. Lead advantage dwindles down to 3.9 seconds at this stage. Probably down to 3.8 by the time we finished the first third of the lap, because Mark Richards was a little bit quicker through the first sector than Shane Stoney. Shane Stoney is hugely experienced, knows how to win championships. They can't claim this championship for this year because that was already stitched up by Marcus Clutton's fantastic performance at Snetterton in very, very tricky conditions. But as Shane Stoney now works his way through Sheen Curve and up towards the left-hander at Stirling's, he'll be just watching his mirrors and just making sure that he keeps the gap where he wants it to be. Ease off when he needs to. Push hard if he thinks he's getting caught, but always make sure you've got that little bit of buffer that you need between yourself and what is still a charging Mark Richards, who on this lap I think might have dropped further away. Yeah, he's made a bit of a mistake somewhere in the middle sector. So Shane Stoney now pops in the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 26.9, and the lead advantage now grows to 4.3 seconds, so 0.4 of a second slower over the course of that lap was the car in second place. So Shane Stoney increasing the amount of daylight between himself and that car there, Mark Richards, turning his way through Druids in what is second position. So along the Cooper Straight for the 13th time. When the clock gets to 30 minutes remaining, which is in 15 seconds time almost, that's when the pit window opens. But the cars have to pass the pit lane open board before they can come in. So it'll be hung out to Shane Stoney at the end of this lap. He has to drive past it, I think, is the way the regulations are written, even if the clock is showing 30 minutes to go. Now the pit window opens at this point, but he's got to drive past the board before he can dive in. Now, he's just catching traffic as well here. It will be the number 49 car that's shared between Jason Green and Neil Glover. New to the championship for this year, the pair of them. They move neatly out of the way. I think it's Neil that's scheduled to start that car. Didn't compromise the lap time particularly of Shane Stoney, so he can still crack on in the lead of the race. And now we'll head over the start-finish line with the pit window having opened. Now Shane Stoney was leading by 4.3 seconds at the beginning of the lap. That's come down to 4.1 as Mark Richards had a slightly better run through the traffic. That was actually Mark Richards' fastest lap of the race that he has done so far, and is only a matter of, 12 one-thousandths of a second slower than the overall fastest lap of the race that we've had posted so far, which is by the race leader, Shane Stoney. Over the start-finish line is John McLeod. Now, this is the fight for 4th and 5th place. So John McLeod, number 14, under pressure from Elliot Goodman. Two of them close to each other as they head up towards Paddock Hill Bend and then on the run in towards Druids. John McLeod very much is his local circuit as well, lives in the city. John, who is in his 50s now, early 50s John, racing Radicals for a good number of years, having come out of the various Caterham championships, under pressure from the car that sits behind, which is number 28, that being Elliot Goodman. And now we've also got Peter Tyler coming under pressure. This will be for 6th position, as the car that's looking to try and thrust its way through is Auden Goodmanson. So Peter Tyler under pressure from the car that is the leading car in the team's challenge that we've got. Auden Goodmanson, of course, once the pit window opens, will hand that car over to Tom Ashton for part 2 of the race. Now, can Auden Goodmanson gain another place before he is done with driving duties in this 50-minute race? Because Tom Ashton will be suited and booted in the pit lane and ready to take over the car from his teammate. Rate of close has been quite significant as well over the course of the last few laps. Peter Tyler's last lap was a 1 minute 31.4. That was his best lap of the race. Auden Goodmanson set his best lap of the race, and that was 2 minutes quicker. 2 seconds quicker. So the rate of close has been quite significant. I think the first of the pit stoppers is coming in as well very shortly. So we should be able to see some of the cars heading into pit lane. That's Elliot Goodman, yep, so Elliot Goodman is in. Elliot Goodman's car, you can see there sitting in the pit lane, as over the start-finish line, Peter Tyler still coming under pressure from Auden Goodmanson. So they will move themselves up to the fight now for 5th and 6th place, with Elliot Goodman being in the pit lane. Elliot Goodman also has 5 success seconds to serve as well. So the 45 seconds, which is mandatory, plus an extra 5 as a result of his finish in the final pit stop race at Silverstone. But this fight still continues for 5th and 6th place. In towards the left-hander at Graham Hill Bend. Peter Tyler coming under ever more pressure from Auden Goodmanson, who got a good run coming out of the corner, but is he going to try anything? Yeah, he does. He dives up the inside, heading in towards Surtees' corner. Peter Tyler lets him go through and therefore gains the place there. Auden Goodmanson with a good move. That was all done with the drive that he got coming off Graham Hill Bend. Good momentum coming off the corner, and was able to just sneak it through up the inside of Peter Tyler in towards the braking area for Surtees and gains the place. That now moves Goodmanson up into 5th place. Peter Tyler drops down into 6th position, while Shane Stoney is just setting fastest laps again all of a sudden now, the race leader. 1:26.288 last time through. So we are fast approaching the halfway point of this race. More cars in the pit lane as well. So that is Rod Goodman that now is in the pit lane. Elliott leaves, Rod's in. A Goodman family affair in the pit lane. So the 50 seconds have ticked away for Elliott Goodman. For Rod Goodman, he is just off scratch in reality, so just 45 seconds that car needs to remain stationary. But of course, everybody has to cycle through this process. So Elliott Goodman back out of the pit lane, looking to try and press on again. There goes Rod Goodman out of the pit lane. But there will still be, of course, everybody else that at some point will have to dive into the pit lane and conduct their mandatory pit stops. And in the case of some of them, it'll be change of driver, of course. Another new fastest lap for Shane Stoney as well, 1:25.982. The lead advantage was down to 3 seconds. It's doubled that now. It's up to 6.2 seconds, as you can see on your screens, between Shane Stoney and Mark Richards. Despite the fact that Mark Richards is still just setting his best laps of the race, he's continually about half a second a lap slower than Shane Stoney at this rate. Right, in the pit lane, coming into the pit lane now comes Neil Glover to hand over to Jason Green. At the top of the pit lane, the white car with the red flashes to it, is going to be Auden Goodmanson to hand over to Tom Ashton. So that could be one that's worth watching. Tom Ashton will be quick behind the wheel of that one. So out jumps one driver, in will jump the next. So I think that's Neil Glover giving way to Jason Green. So mechanics just putting in the seat inserts, and I think just double checking that everything is good to go. Other mechanics just adjusting tyre pressures on these Control Hankook tyres that they all run. So now everything is ready to go. Out of pit lane comes Tom Ashton. So Tom, a long time Radical racer, now looking to see what he can do to propel that car further up through the order. But a good job was done by Auden Goodmanson. Might have made a slight mistake on the formation lap, but after that worked terribly hard to work his way back into contention, and was having some good battles along the way as well. So some of the cars having pitted so far, others still as yet to dive for the pit lane, including our race leader Shane Stoney and Mark Richards and Jason Rishover and John McLeod and Peter Tyler, all still as yet to head into the pit lane. Still got 3 minutes in which to do it. Still waiting for the final elements of the pit stop to be concluded for Jason Green, who's just handing over to Neil Glover. So Auden Goodmanson having handed over that car to Tom Ashton. That car is running kind of a 7 in 7th place at the moment. It is still going to be leading the team's championship as well for the cars that are in that. It's a car that we've seen at every single round as well. It's the only car in the team's championship that we've seen at every single round of the 2020 Radical Challenge Championship, which, remember, is already decided. The team's championship is sorted, the overall championship is sorted, and it is the final weekend of racing for them as well. So they conclude their championship here at Brands Hatch this weekend with 2 50-minute races, one today, one tomorrow, and they'll also have a sprint race tomorrow as well, for which, for the shared cars, the drivers will have to sort out as who's going to be involved in it. So Tom Ashton pushing on. What the lap times look like from Tom Ashton? Well, last lap was a 1:31. Into the pit lane comes the race leader. So Shane Stoney into the pit lane. He built a nice advantage between himself and Mark Richards. But remember, Shane Stoney has 15 seconds to spend additional in the pits to this car here, number 52, Mark Richards. And Mark Richards was certainly less than 15 seconds behind him. So you could argue by the time Shane Stoney concludes his pit stops, and Mark Richards will have to do his soon because the pit window is going to close in another minute and 40 seconds, Mark Richards potentially could take up the lead of the race because he is on scratch. He only has to remain stationary for 45 seconds. For Shane Stoney, 60 seconds he'll have to remain stationary for. So Mark Richards leads now. And at the end of this lap, I'm sure will be destined for the pit lane. Now, is Mark Richards slowing there all of a sudden? Mark Richards, I think, might be... No, that was back marker Lappery. So Mark Richards pressing on, having dealt with the traffic, turning his way through Sheen Curve up towards Stirling. The traffic staying neatly out of his way. Mark Richards, I think, at the end of this lap will peel his way into the pit lane. Shane Stoney has concluded his pit stop, so the time that he needed to remain stationary has elapsed. Following the pit lane speed limit, he'll trundle his way back to pit lane exit and accelerate his way back into the race. Does Mark Richards come in on this lap? Well, I think no is the answer, so he can stay out for one more lap. As long as he pits at the end of this one, he'll be fine, because whilst the pit window will have closed, he won't have passed the board. So if you pass the board that says pit lane closed, then you're too late. Whereas that board will be hung out at the end of this lap. Mark Richards will have to peel his way into the pit lane, otherwise a penalty would be given. In fact, I think he's come in anyway, so Mark Richards did opt to pit. Where is he going to come back out then is the mute point. So Shane Stoney back out on track now. He needs to get round this out lap as quickly as he possibly can, because Mark Richards will be stationary in the pit lane, and I suspect time will run out that Shane Stoney, who was leading the race before he came into the pits, will end up in second place. We'll have to wait and see. It'll be only at the end of this lap. So John McLeod's in the pit lane. Mark Richards, you can see, is in the pit lane. Over the start-finish line comes Jason Rishover. That's Elliot Goodman that's behind him. So this is now the fight for third and fourth place, heading up towards Paddock Hill Bend. Jason Rishover looking to see whether he can fend off the aspirations of the car that sits behind. The man from Bushy Heath, who again is in his 50s now, is Jason Rishover, involved in the property industry and coming under pressure from Elliot Goodman. Both of them having gone through and are pushing as hard as they can. Last time through, Jason Rishover, 1 minute 32.7, slower lap from him. Elliot Goodman was a 1 minute 27.6. Back out of pit lane goes Mark Richards. Now, where is Shane Stoney relative to him? I would have thought behind, potentially. So, number 23, Jason Rishover, still under this pressure from Elliot Goodman. The two of them absolutely together, fighting over third and fourth position. Out of Dingle Dell, up towards Sheen Curve. This is for the final podium spot, remember, as well. Success seconds from this race, depending on how they finish, will be recalculated for tomorrow. In other words, the winner of this race will get an extra 20 seconds in the pits for tomorrow's race. Second place will get an extra 15, third will get an extra 10, and those that finish fourth and fifth will get an extra 5 seconds for tomorrow's 50-minute race that we've got. That will be the final race of the 2020 Radical Challenge Championship season. 18 minutes to go. Mark Richards on his out lap, having completed his pit stop. Now, Elliot Goodman sniffing around to see whether there's an opportunity to take third place away from Jason Rishover. Jason Rishover using all of his experience over the years to just make sure he covers off any move or any attempt to try and take that podium spot away. Of course, for Elliot Goodman, the difficult thing is as well, the closer he gets to the car in front, the more it affects the aerodynamics over his car. The downforce and the aerodynamic grip of these cars is absolutely staggering, so quick through the corners. But the consequence of that is that, as you get closer to the car ahead, you don't get the clean airflow over the front of your car. The car ahead creates a hole in the air, and that means that you don't get the pressure of the air pushing your car into the ground and working those Hankook tyres to try and maximise the grip through the corner. So just as Elliot Goodman starts to close, then all of a sudden he also feels the effects of the lack of downforce. Is this the opportunity? No, not quite. Still going to sit behind Jason Rishover as they turn their way through the left-hander. Well, Mark Richards did indeed conclude his pit stop and come back out in the lead of the race. I thought it would happen. So number 82, Mark Richards, does lead from 89, Shane Stoney. The lead advantage is about 9.7 seconds, so we'll keep an eye on that and see which way it heads. This is the best of the battles we have out on circuit at the moment, which is for third and fourth position. still together. Still no real opportunity for Elliot Goodman to work his way through, however. Through the right-hander at Druids, in towards the left-hander at Graham Hill Bend. Jason Rishover still looking to try and make sure that he just gets cleanly off every corner. As long as he gets cleanly off each corner, you'll be a little bit slower in towards the apex, but make sure you apex correctly and then get cleanly off the corner. But I think Elliot Goodman was slightly better that time. Coming off Surtees, Elliot Goodman might have got a little bit of a run here on Jason Rishover. He's picking up the toe. No, he's still too far away as they head up towards the very fast, almost banked right-hander at Hawthorns. So, rather frustratingly, he's still just got to sit behind Jason Rishover and see whether there's any opportunity to pick his pocket. Any mistake at all from Jason Rishover will be seized immediately by Elliot Goodman, but for the moment those mistakes just aren't happening. .3 seconds is the gap first to second. The gap between these cars fighting over third and fourth has been hovering around 0.3 of a second for lap after lap after lap. And as they now head over the start-finish line, this is going to be 21 laps completed for this pair fighting over the final podium spot. Here's our race leader now. This is Mark Richards leading the race at this stage, but if you look behind him, that is Peter Tyler's car. So it might be a black and yellow car, but that is not Shane Stoney. Shane Stoney is nearly 10 seconds down the road. That's Peter Tyler's car that is behind Mark Richards, so he's having to deal with a little bit of traffic, so that just might compromise his lap times at this stage. With 15 minutes of the race to go, Mark Richards from Shane Stoney, Jason Rishover from Elliot Goodman, the battle that we're looking at. John McLeod and Tom Ashton in 5th and 6th place, Rod Goodman, Peter Tyler, and then Jason Green will be the order that we've got in this race so far, with Tom Ashton in the number 7 car also leading the teams category as well for those cars that are shared over the course of the race weekend. So down the straight goes the fight for third and fourth. Through Graham Hill Bend goes 52, which is Mark Richards. 8.4 seconds is the lead advantage at this stage. So it has just been brought down the last lap through. Now Shane Stoney was a full second quicker than Mark Richards. So the gap is down to 8.4 seconds all of a sudden. So Mark Richards needs to try and push hard. He had a little bit of traffic to deal with. That was Peter Tyler's car that he dealt with. He's got more traffic up the road that he needs to deal with as well, which is the 7th place car of Rod Goodman, which is the last of the cars that's on the lead lap currently. And for Mark Richards, he will catch that car over the course of the next few laps. Jason Rishover also with a bit of traffic to deal with here. This will be Jason Green's car, number 49. It runs in 9th position. Jason just holding up Jason Rishover, the two Jasons together, but Jason Green gets out of harm's way and allows the pair squabbling over third and fourth to thread their way through on the run out of Druids, so they can resume their battle yet again with now 13 minutes of the race remaining. So we're almost at the quarter or three-quarters distance point. Down through Hawthorn Hill, up towards Hawthorns for the 23rd time comes Jason Rishover, still being shadowed all of the time by Elliot Goodman. The gap between the pair of them still 0.3 of a second. That's how it stood for the last, half dozen or maybe even more laps than that now. Whilst Elliot Goodman has always been close, he's never quite been close enough to try and sneak the car up the inside. He's not going to try it here either at the left-hander at Stirling's. His best bet would probably be try something up at Druids, or he's going to have to rely on maybe Jason Rishover making a small mistake at Paddock Hill Bend or something like that. Now, here's our race leader, traffic to deal with. He hasn't quite as yet caught Rod Goodman's car, but that is pretty much inevitable over the course of the next lap, or next few corners possibly. The lead advantage has been whittled down further. It was 8.4, wasn't it? It's now down to 7.6 seconds over the course of this lap. Doesn't look as though it's come down a great deal more, just a few thousandths in the first sector. In the second sector, Shane Stoney will be heading through that now, and he's brought it down by another 4/10 in the second sector, so could be down to something like 7.2 seconds maybe at the end of this lap. For third and fourth though, still as they were, still 0.3 of a second between the pair of them. Still Jason Rishover from Elliot Goodman. As for the 24th time, they work their way out of Surtees. So down into the braking area for the next of the corners comes his fight for second and third position. Now Shane Stoney has not come over the start-finish line that time through. There goes Mark Richards. So Mark Richards has now all of a sudden got himself a very sizable gap from Shane Stoney. So there goes Mark Richards. He's dealt with the traffic, he's dealt with Rod Goodman's car, and Jason Rishover under pressure from Elliot Goodman I think might possibly go through up into second at the end of this lap, because Shane Stoney, who was looking for a strong position, is in the pit lane. Yeah, the front body clam, you can see it on the left hand side of the screen. Shane Stoney's car is in the pit lane. I didn't think he'd come through. So Shane Stoney now is going to drop down through the order. Through goes Jason Rishover into second position, Elliot Goodman in third. So this is now no longer for the final podium spot. This is now for second and third in the race. So through Druids goes Jason Rishover. Elliot Goodman right behind him in third position as they thread their way out of Graham Hill Bend. And there is Shane Stoney's car. Yep, so going to work on it. The driver that was leading the race comfortably before the pit window opens and dropped down to second place as a result of the extra seconds he had to spend in the pits as a result of his results from Snetterton last weekend that were carried over, and having charged his way back into contention. Sadly, it's all come to nothing, and Shane Stoney's now tumbling like a stone down through the order. He's now down into 8th position and off the lead lap. This is still a great fight though going on for second and third place. Jason Rishover, despite the fact that Elliot Goodman has never really tried a move, but Jason Rishover has continually had to push hard because he's always been under pressure. Gap between the pair of them up to 0.5 of a second, but it's about the largest that it's been over the course of the last 20 minutes or so nearly, as they turn their way for the 25th time now out of Stirling's and start to head along the straight towards Clearways. Now, these two cars, last time through, were doing 1 minute 28 second laps. The car that's in fourth, which is John McLeod, did a 1 minute 27. So about a second almost was gained over Jason Rishover. So the gap second to fourth coming down. Keep an eye towards that, because John McLeod's car is a white car with lighter blue flashes, and it might just appear at the back of some of the shots before too much longer. So through and in towards the braking area for Graham Hill Bend goes that fight for second and third position. Here comes Mark Richards, our race leader, over the start-finish line. He's got a very comfortable lead now. Almost 60 seconds is the lead that he's got between himself and the pair of cars fighting over second and third place. So Mark Richards on course for a win potentially in the Radical Challenge Championship, but there are still 9 minutes just under of this race to go. So Mark Richards sprinting his way along the Cooper Straight. Mark Richards, his best result last year in the championship was second position at Alton Park. I think that was his best result in the 2019 championship season. Mark Richards in the 2018 championship season also had a couple of seconds, but I don't think took a win in the 2018 championship season. And if we look back in towards the 2017 championship season, again he had a second place there but didn't take a win. As over the start finish line goes still Jason Rishover, who just can't shake away Elliot Goodman. So the two of them have been very much inseparable for lap after lap after lap after lap, but Elliot Goodman as yet hasn't been able to find the key to the door to sneak his way through, and the two of these now are lapping slower than that car behind. I did say watch out for John McLeod. The white car with the blue flashes in the background of shot is beginning to close in all of the time. So Jason Rishover last lap 2 minutes 28.6, Elliot Goodman 2 minutes 28.4, John McLeod 2 minutes 27.5. He's gaining a second a lap over this pair, so whilst it's two fighting over the final two podium spots, it could be three, and it could even be four, because Tom Ashton at the wheel of the number 7 car is closing in as well. So it could build to a crescendo this race, and Jason Rishover, if he hadn't been busy already in this race, he's going to be a very busy chap for the remaining 7 minutes. Under pressure from Elliot Goodman. Then there is John McLeod, you can see closing, and there is Tom Ashton as well. So second, third, fourth, fifth, all beginning to close up now with just under 7 minutes of this race to go, whilst Mark Richards comfortably leads it at the wheel of car number 52. So this is lap number 27 through the left-hander at Stirling's. Jason Rishover under pressure continually from Elliot Goodman. John McLeod and Tom Ashton beginning to try and draw ever closer and get in on the mix and join in the fun as well in what is at the moment just a pair of cars fighting over second and third place. Shortly to be a trio and surely to be a quartet before too much longer. Another lap completed, 27 laps now completed, up towards the right-hander at Paddock Hill Bend, down towards the braking area at Ford Druids, and you can see ever closing is John McLeod, bringing with him Tom Ashton as well. John McLeod has almost managed to latch himself onto the coattails now of Elliot Goodman. Shane Stoney's car is back in the race, I think that car has rejoined, but is now a couple of laps off the lead. Whatever the problem was, they seem to have sorted it. But this four-car fight now for second, third, fourth and fifth places is fully formed. Out of Surtees, starting to head towards Pilgrim's Drop and Hawthorne Hill. Here they come. Jason Rishover, Elliot Goodman, John McLeod, Tom Ashton, who's taken over that car from Auden Gudmundsson. Remember, that's the number 7 car that was in the hands of the man from Iceland in the early part of the race, leading the team's championship and leading the team's section of this race as well. Now the top 4, these 4 cars are fairly equidistantly spread as well, aren't they? On towards the brakes, in towards the left-hander. Order still remains the same, however, and just wondering, has Jason Rishover picked up his pace a little bit over the course of this lap? Yeah, through the middle part of this lap, he's just set his best second sector, so the middle part of the lap faster than Jason Rishover's gone before, so I think he's pushing even harder now to see whether he can try and pull away, conscious of the fact that cars are starting to queue up behind him if he's not careful. So, through Paddock Hill Bend, they are now on lap number 29. There's the 4th place car, John McLeod, just turning his way through the right-hander. The lead advantage is 61 seconds now, so Mark Richards is 61 seconds up the road from this little squabble that we're just seeing turning its way on towards the Cooper Straight. And you think that, well, a 61-second advantage, the cars are lapping at about 1 minute 30, say, just under that, so it's almost 2/3 of a lap advantage that Mark Richards has built up over this quartet, heading up towards Hawthorns for what is now the 29th time of asking. Through the right-hander, down the short straight. Now Elliot Goodman is going to have to turn to defence mode here before too much longer, because he has now been fully caught by John McLeod. So from wanting to attack, he might just have to defend here, and John McLeod, who bounces over the curbs in 4th place, is also going to have to watch his mirrors, because Tom Ashton is poised and ready to pounce as well. So through the left-hander, this is lap number 29. That's going to be concluded on towards lap number 30. All 4 of them as one in towards the braking area for the right-hander at Clearways, and then on towards Clark Curve, another 2.4332 mile lap of the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit chalked into the book. 3.5 minutes to go. That's going to equate to what the lap that they started, and probably another 2 or maybe even 3 thereafter, depends on where Mark Richards is when the clock ticks to 0. But what a great battle it has been for lap after lap after lap. Elliot Goodman has been shadowing Jason Rishover, but now Elliot Goodman is being shadowed by that white car with its blue flashes, which is John McLeod. Downhill in towards the braking area for Graham Hill Bend. You've got to stay nice and neat and tidy. The Hankook tyres will still be working hard in these cool temperatures, so they'll be up to temperature now, but maybe starting to just go off a little bit. That's why in the pit window we see so many of the mechanics just dropping the tyre pressures. Doesn't matter what manufacturer tyre you use, you have the same problem. As the pressure increases, you lose a little bit of grip, so you drop the pressures when the car is stationary in its mandatory pit stop to try and get the tyre in the optimum range again, so that it operates as well as it possibly can. And all of these cars now looking as though they are pushing as hard as they can. The lap times have just dropped off a little bit. That's largely because they're all squabbling. John McLeod made a very slight mistake there, and that's opened the door to Tom Ashton, and Tom Ashton sneaks his way through. Just the slightest mistake, and that was all that Tom Ashton needed to grab the place away. So the white car with its red flashes goes through now. Tom Ashton moves his way up into 4th position. Down to 5th goes John McLeod. Now, what can Tom Ashton do in the remaining time? Can he work his way up to the potential podium spots? Because the next car up the road is going to be the black and gold car, which is Elliot Goodman, who's been sort of stuck there in 3rd position for the last half an hour or so, and largely been stuck right up the exhaust pipes of Jason Rishover. Can Tom Ashton try and unlock the door? Notice Tom Ashton's car is a left-hand drive Radical, whereas Jason Rishover's and Elliot Goodman's car are right-hand drive examples. So along the Cooper Straight they go. Here comes Jason Rishover and Elliot Goodman. Then the left-hand drive car of Tom Ashton. But for our race leader, which is Mark Richards, he is round through Druids for what should be the penultimate time this time through. So the lap that he's on and one more thereafter. He's on lap number 32 at the moment. And for Mark Richards, it is going to be a dominant performance. And looking back through his performances over the course of the last few years, I can see plenty of second places for Mark Richards, but I can't see a race win for Mark Richards. So I'm not going to say it is, but I think potentially he is on course for his first overall win in the Radical Challenge Championship. We'll have to wait and see. So back towards this great fight that's going on for second, third, fourth and fifth positions. They turn their way through Clearways Corner. Elliot Goodman trying to get a good run on Jason Rishover here. He's as close as he's been, you know, might have half an opportunity as they head up towards Paddock Hill Bend this time through. He takes the wide line in. Jason Rishover only moves to the left-hand side of the circuit quite late on, just to cover off any opportunity that Elliot Goodman was going to try and do. And I do think that this is going to be a grandstand finish really for this one. They've been together for lap after lap after lap after lap. Tom Ashton now in number 7 is coming back under pressure as through and over the start finish line onto his last lap of the race goes Mark Richards. So 10 seconds to go, which means that these guys here are now on their penultimate lap. So the lap that they are on and one more thereafter. Mark Richards just having another quick look through again. He's had wins but not in endurance races, so it is going to be his first, I think, 50-minute race win for Mark Richards. Yeah, he certainly had in towards the braking area for what is Westfield, down through Dingle Dell. Jason Rishover, say, has continually had somebody in his mirrors, and it really has been Elliot Goodman all of the time. Elliot Goodman has never fully come under pressure though from the cars behind. John McLeod had a little bit of a go but never tried anything, and Tom Ashton now I think is conscious of the fact that he desperately would like an overall podium finish, but for himself and Gordon Goodmanson, it's all about the team's championship for them in reality, which they've already stitched up, but they just want to have a really solid season in it and maybe see what they want to do in the 2021 season. But for Mark Richards, just turning his way out of Stirlings and about to sprint his way down the straight and in towards the braking area for Clearways and Clark Curve for the final time. Turns his way through the right-hander on his return to the championship. Mark Richards is going to come out on top, having qualified on pole position, what's at 0.6 of a second quicker than Shane Stoney. Mark Richards claims the win in the first of our Radical Challenge Championship races over the course of this weekend here at Brands Hatch. Who's going to finish in second, third, fourth and fifth there is still very much up for dispute. It's still Jason Rishover from Elliot Goodman, Tom Ashton and John McLeod, but there's also a little bit of traffic again on this lap that could have a pivotal role to play. It depends as to whether Jason Rishover will meet it. That car I think is the number 49 car that's in the hands of Jason Green. Now Jason was very aware of the quicker traffic heading up towards him earlier on in this race. He needs to make sure he stays out of harm's way here, otherwise he could be a real catalyst in this race as to what's going to happen. Jason Green getting caught by the cars as they head through Dingle Dell and up towards Sheen Curve. Where is Jason Rishover going to meet the back marker? No, sensible driving from Jason Green, stays well and truly out of harm's way, and that will be a big sigh of relief to Jason Rishover, who I think is going to have just about done enough here. Elliot Goodman now is still with him, and Tom Ashton is in on the mix as well. It might all change, you know, possibly on the run up towards the braking area, but it looks as though Jason Rishover is just going to get cleanly off the corner, but Tom Ashton is now trying to sneak his way up the inside of Elliot Goodman and should be able to prize his way through into third position at the final corner. Jason Rishover finishes in second place, Tom Ashton finishes in third place, Elliot Goodman completes the top four. John McLeod will come through and finish in fifth position, and it will be Rod Goodman who's there in sixth place, with Peter Tyler seventh, Shane Stoney eighth and Jason Green in ninth position. But yeah, that order had been like that for so long, but Tom Ashton took the opportune moment to sneak his way through. There is our race winner. Mark Richards wins the first of our Radical Challenge Championship races here at Brands Hatch. He will be absolutely ecstatic with that one. and he will be looking forward to maybe adding to the tally over the course of the 2 races that they have tomorrow, the sprint race and the endurance race. Confirmation of the results then. Mark Richards claims the win from Jason Rishover in 2nd place. Jason 59 seconds behind in the end. 3rd place goes the way of Tom Ashton and Auden Gudmundsson. They win the team's championship as well, or the team's trophy. 4th place is number 28 Elliot Goodman, and 5th was number 14 John McLeod. 6th was 31 Rod Goodman, and then it was Peter Tyler in 7th place. Shane Stoney did get the car back out and finished it in 8th place in the end. And 9th place went the way of Neil Glover and Jason Green. And that is the order of the results for our first race of the Radical Challenge Championship here at Brands Hatch. More to come from them over the course of tomorrow when we see them out for their sprint race and their endurance race. But we've got more Radical Cup racing coming up later on by way of the Radical SR1 Cup. So tune in for that a little bit later on today. Until then, that's all from Brands Hatch.